Hey folks, this is Chris Johnson at Living Waters Fly Fishing. Today we are going to be doing our Whiting Farms Hackle class. So this is kind of I guess otherwise titled Confessions of a Hackle Addict. So we're going to go over what makes all these different feathers so dramatically different than anything else out on the market. We're going to go through kind of an entire lineup overview of whiting products. I mean, as you can see, I'm not really a major fan of them or anything. But we're going to go through an entire lineup, talk about the difference between roosters and hens and the feather composition, and then we'll talk about the grading system, and we're going to talk about all that. So sit back, grab some sort of coffee or something like that, and enjoy the next what is probably going to be a little bit of going through hackles, and we'll actually show some stuff on camera. We've got a couple of cameras set up so you can see different feathers and what they're for and how they work and all that sort of good stuff. So this would normally be a live class, but alas, I will be guiding in Colorado for a little bit. So pre-recorded this one for you guys just so we've got this for everybody while I'm out. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to leave anything in the comments. I will reply to all of that. If you have any questions about any products, usages, anything like that, or just something you wanted to know in general about the feathers. So we've got a ton of information here. A little bit of background, I've been in fly tying since I was 11. So I have tied a long time now. And I became addicted to hackle somewhere in that process. And traditionally, dry fly hackle was very, very small, very short. If you were to look at like a modern dry fly hackle, the packages behind me you see, I mean, I mean, you can't even fit the hands on the screen, but they're over that long, just the pelts themselves. And we'll show some of those on camera in just a second. But traditionally, they were these little bitty tiny rooster necks that, I mean, the whole thing was like that big. It was just so small. I mean, the actual skin patch was, about like this, and the feathers were probably that much on average. Very, very small. And the thing that was kind of interesting about it is, if you look now at, a feather that would have been this much in length, now we have saddle feathers that are over 30 inches. And they're basically the same job as applied, and that is tying dry flies with them. But having genetically bred fly fishing hackle is spectacular, and it's something that really was not available until more recent years. If you can really look at it, and probably the story of it probably begins a little bit early. As far as whiting is concerned, you're looking at kind of the late 80s is really where that all kind of came to being. So the farm itself is located up in Delta, Colorado. Amazing bunch of people. Shout out to Phil Trim, one of the people I probably talk to too much in this industry. But love getting to chat with he and Dr. Tom anytime I get the chance. The whole crew up there is absolutely fantastic. And I've learned a lot about hackle over the years, from the usage of it here, at my personal fly tying bench, as well as selling it over the years and seeing variations, trends, things come and go. I've been in it long enough now that colors have bred out, and so that's kind of an interesting thing in and of itself. But we'll talk a little bit about all of that moving forward. So how it started is basically Tom Whiting's. He is a master geneticist among many other things. He is all things poultry expert. And basically we had short, broad dry fly feathers that made it very difficult to hackle a dry fly. Traditionally, it took sometimes even 2 feathers to hackle a single fly. By selective breeding, he was able to lengthen and narrow that feather to where now it comes in more desirable sizes in greater amounts throughout the entire pelt. So instead of just one portion of the pelt being usable, now the entire thing is all the way throughout, with more of what I would call the sweet spot, where you've got that kind of that 12 to 18 range where most of us do the bulk of our dry fly tying. More feathers in that range now on a pelt than ever before. And so it's something that's truly revolutionized fly tying in general. But I think the other side of Whiting Farms that doesn't get sung nearly enough is the wet fly side and the streamer side and the saltwater side. Everybody knows them for genetic dry fly hackle, and that's, I think, what was the entire impetus behind the whole thing. But what came out of it is we now have feathers that are literally bred and designed for just about everything under the sun. And so by knowing what they're used for, knowing the differences in the genetic lines, it's really going to help you as a tyer. And I think you'll really find it's going to help the end product of, if you are looking for a fly to look a certain way, there's a way to make that happen, and we can definitely show you that and how to do so. So long and short, we get asked a lot how many birds are on the farm. And so I talked to Phil about this. I was asking, what are you currently running? So it's about 60 to 80,000 birds at a time on the farm, give or take. So that's kind of how many they run. You're looking at, for dry fly harvest, it's about a 42-week from hatch to harvest on these birds. So it's not like if you find out you were out of, light ginger or natural dun, it's not like you can just go to the back room and pull some. I mean, they do have some stock, yes, but it is one of those things that if something is out and there's a demand for it, you're looking at almost a year to really see a full replenishment back in. So, I mean, forecasting is got to be, I don't envy their jobs at all. I get to play with the stuff and enjoy it, and we get to talk you through it, but I don't envy the job of forecasting and trying to keep up with product development at Whiting Farms. That's not for the faint of heart. The other thing that's interesting about it is, as genetic lines go, they run so many different breeds on the farm. I think this is kind of funny. And I did take a few notes here because I knew I wouldn't remember all this. So if you see me glancing down, I do have a cheat sheet for once because there's a long product list and I don't want to forget anything. But a lot of people ask how many breeds. And so you're looking at, there's roughly a dozen that they maintain for actual tires. But since they do actually preserve poultry genetics and actually preserve some of the lineages that in some cases they're one of the few places, if not some of the only place to actually find some of these genetics remaining on the earth. They have over 100 breeds, or right around 100 breeds. I think it's right there on the farm. So, again, give or take, but about 100 breeds preserved there genetically on farm property, which is incredible. So it's not just the tying side. There's a lot of other aspects, laying hens and everything like that Whiting has developed over the years. We know Whiting Farms from the fly tying side, but keep in mind, the man is a poultry geneticist of the highest order. He's going to have everything figured out. And so that's the other side, is there's all sorts of chickens that he is preserving that genetic integrity for future generations to make sure some of those don't go by the wayside. So very incredible to see all that takes place there at a little farm in Delta, Colorado. So it's just awesome to having been there. It is an incredible operation. The scale of it actually kind of makes me scratch my head how they do what they do. I've seen the incubators. I've been there when the chicks are hatching. I've been to the grading rooms, been to all of it over there, and how they cure the hackles and all that sort of good stuff. And it's incredible, the fact that the actual farm itself is very eco-friendly, in that there's they compost a lot. They have their own crop fields. It's incredible what happens there on farm. It's largely fairly self-sustaining, and so it's very encouraging to see the scale of the operation, how it works, and even just how conscientious they are in the entire process, towards the birds and towards even the subsistence there on the farm. So it's really incredible to see how this all works. So the other thing I would mention, so we mentioned a 42-week harvest for dry fly product, normally on like an American rooster or something like that, where we're not using it for those long, real long, narrow saddles. The harvest rate's actually a little bit quicker. It's around 32 weeks to final harvest. So you're looking at a little bit more abbreviated time, but not significantly. So it is kind of interesting that there are different harvest rates per different birds, depending on the usage of feathers and just the dynamics of the breed, how fast they grow, what are you trying to accomplish from the final product of the bird. The other thing that's funny, I'll bring a chicken out for this. This is a lot more fun to look at anyway. So this is a whiting rooster. This thing's massive. So I mean, I'm not going to sit him on my shoulder. I've got a quail at home for that. But yeah, whiting roosters are, it's a physically large bird for one. And you'll see there's just all these incredible, just very, very narrow, very fine dry fly feathers all over this. So this would be the actual cape region right here. So if you think about a superhero wearing a cape, it's right behind the neck. That's exactly it. So neck hackle or capes come right here behind the comb, right here, the rooster's comb. You're going to cut right there, and this portion moving through that, all these feathers here are what make up a dry fly cape. Likewise, on this side, you can see the rooster's saddles hanging very, very low, and if you'll look, it hangs a little bit further than the feet. Well, they had to go back to the drawing board because the hackles got so long. They had to genetically breed the chickens for longer legs. Yes, you can't, chickens wearing stilts, not a great idea. So they actually had to rebreed the chickens down the line for longer legs. As the hackles began to get longer, the legs needed to get a little bit taller so they didn't damage the feathers for consumers. And so I found that very, very interesting. The average whiting rooster has about a 1/2 inch longer leg than any equivalent breed. which I thought was kind of interesting. So if you look at like the origination of the breed itself, and then kind of as Whiting steered the line down another genetic avenue, the legs were actually longer. So he actually selectively bred not only for great feathers, but actually for longer legs, which I found quite interesting and funny when I first learned that years ago. So just be aware that there's a lot going on within a single bird. And I mean, we didn't mention all the other things that they get out of the bird. You've got, soft hackles, you've got Schlappen, you've got the, all this stuff up here is just amazing soft hackle. I love this stuff. So, I mean, it's just an incredible use of the entire bird. They try to utilize every single piece that they can. Even some of the stiffer tail feathers, I've actually tied mosquito patterns out of those before, where you can actually get the larger tail feathers for certain applications. So the entire bird, as much as possible, is completely utilized. And I think that that's really an interesting thing about Whiting Farms is it's not just harvesting for, the saddle or just for the cape. It's actually trying to utilize the entire product, not just from a profit standpoint, but just from a, doing the right thing. If you're going to grow a raw product like that, having the ability to utilize the entire bird. Now with hens, you'll notice these feathers, for one, it's a physically smaller bird. Feathers are going to be a lot softer. They're going to be more rounded. And these are going to be, solely for, wet fly, streamer, things of that sort. No dry fly application with a hen. So there's a little bantam here, kind of cute little bugger, little fuzzy head. I like that kind of stuff, especially like on the Polish and things of that sort. It's hilarious how some of those things have this crazy fluff up top. And they actually sold those at one point under the name streamer packs. So you would get them like that quite a bit. So, but the hens and the roosters, we're going to talk about the difference in each and the role that they play within the Whiting lineup. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is Whiting rooster products. And so we're going to go kind of down the list, and I've got a second camera set up, but the thing that I think we first have to mention is grading. So I'm going to move these chickens out of the way real quick, and we're going to kind of discuss some of the grading elements of how they determine how certain hackles are of a different grade. So I'm going to flash over here. This is a Hebert Minor Platinum. So if you see that little emblem right there by my thumb that says Platinum, if you can't read it on camera, and that right there signifies that this is like, cream of the crop here. This is about as good as it gets. There is actually one grade above this, which is Ultra Platinum, and it's going to be primarily saved back for the collectors and things of that sort. And I'm sure Dr. Tom has a pretty nice collection of them as well, just for genetic markers of showing that this can be done. But nonetheless, Platinum is about as high as you're going to ever see as a consumer. If you ever want a Platinum saddle, I can probably get you one. Platinum capes are a different story. We very, very seldom see Platinums. And in a Hebert Minor, they're exceptionally rare. But Platinum is typically going to be the highest thing you see as a consumer. Another thing Whiting does that I am quite fond of is on the back of their packages, and I know this is in super fine print, but if you will look, it actually gives all the description of each of the grades, where you have the platinum, gold, silver, bronze, and it goes through kind of the dynamics of each of them and what they represent and all that sort of good stuff. And they have that for the Hebert Minor line as well as the Whiting line, along with a little bit of history and brief description of everything there. So for instance, if you were to look up the Whiting one, it'll tell you, the sizes that it approximately ties. You're looking at on a platinum cape, for instance, an average feather ties over 2 flies. And it's interesting that you can get a range of sizes out of a single feather, a single pelt. And it's really awesome to see that when you buy a single product in a cape, the size variance, I mean, up here we've got like, 28s probably, maybe even a 30 or something like that, way up here in the small stuff. But then if we turn this over, you'll notice that the hackles don't get overly large, but they're still, there's still plenty of like size 10s and 12s in there in the very back of this hackle. Also look at just the overall length. The length on this is just absolutely astounding. So how do they grade hackles? So that's the very next question, is how do you determine whether something is bronze, silver, gold, platinum, pro grade, ultra platinum, any of those? How do you determine that? Length and feather density are the two most common things that I would say the most important things that they're going to look for. First thing is going to be overall feather length. Second is just going to be feather density, and then you start going into the cosmetic side. Are there broken tips? Looking at stuff like that. Are there any abnormalities within the feather? Things of that sort. So when you see, what we had here was a true platinum cape. When you see this, it's going to be something that, no broken tips. going to be exceptionally long feathers. If you look at the density on this, I mean, it's just feather on top of feather on top of feather. We're still not even to the back of the cape yet. I mean, it's just incredibly dense. And you can also see that when you turn these pelts sideways, how dense they are, and the feathers actually sit up on themselves. So a very, very impressive piece. You know, and when you will also see, and I'm going to take some of these out of the package and leave some in just because I'm going to have to rebag all this when it's over. But you can see ones like this where they'll have that little gold medallion right there. That would just be a gold one there. You'll see that's in a whiting line. This is a Hebert minor. This is a silver. You'll see that little emblem there. It then goes from there into bronze. So I know we're right in the middle of the Olympics is when I'm filming this, so this kind of feels a little too familiar right now. But this is the gold, silver, and bronze that I want in my life. Here's right here. And then you also have pro grade, which is still an exceptional value and an incredible feather. It does an amazing job. So just be aware that you have a lot of different grades to work with. Now, as we see these feathers, and I'll flash back over here, sorry for the blank screen, but as we see these different feathers in different grades, I mean, we've got a whole stack of hackles right here. You know, what's the difference? What does one do better than the other? Well, you really have to look at the economy of it. I mean, obviously, a platinum cape is going to cost a fortune compared to, you know, a pro grade cape. For most people, a pro grade bronze, it's going to be enough to fulfill that. But if you're looking for longer feathers, you know, very uniform sizing, bigger sweet spots, all that sort of stuff, and actually kind of a lot of times you'll see that feather length be exceptionally long to where, you know, the economy of you're going to get several flies out of a single feather. If you're doing, you know, a real sparse dry fly for, you know, something like real placid still water situations or, you know, very slow flowing creeks, it might only take a couple, you know, handful of turns to make that feather. There's no telling how many. I mean, if you're looking at a saddle feather, you can tie, I've seen people that have tied over a dozen flies out of one feather. That was unheard of prior to genetic hackle being actually created. So when you look at a cape feather, the longer they are, you know, the more flies you can generate out of a single feather. Now, for most of us, a single feather is enough to do one fly, and we'll call it good. We don't mind plucking another one. The other thing you have to look at is yesterday's gold and silver is today's bronze and pro grade. The genetics are still improving. That doesn't just quit. And so I think it's very interesting. I have some hackles behind me. In fact, I think I even have one in the basket over here that we'll show later. And it's a silver. It probably wouldn't make today's bronze. And so it's interesting that even since I've been buying hackle, you know, the grades have stepped dramatically. I have some old Hoffmans that were actually, you know, Hoffman lines before it put the Whiting brand on it, where we actually had a Hoffman line. So we'll talk a little bit about this kind of coming forward here. We're going to go into the actual Whiting rooster side of things. So I'm going to put these graded ones up here real quick. So pardon me, I've got a lot of hackle running around right now. But let's go into the Whiting line real quick. So we've got a whole bunch of Whiting products here, and I'll flash over and show some of these. So this is just a dun grizzly. This would be just a variant, and there is a cree, and that's a midge here as well. And so I'll go ahead and pull this midge one out because, for one, the plastic bags on camera give a little bit of a glare, and this just makes life a little bit easier. So here, this is a midge saddle, and midge saddles are bred to be exceptionally narrow. So this hackle is primarily 18s, 20s, 22s in a saddle. Now, that's going to be about the range of feathers is about there. If you were to go over here to a cape, you're going to have a much larger size variance. So we'll go ahead and pop this guy out here, since we're going to talk about saddles and capes for just a moment. So you're looking at, with a cape, you'll have your very, very fine, small feathers up here that can tie down into the low 20s, or excuse me, I guess high 20s, really be like 26s, 28s. You'll find a little bit of that up here. The sweet spot, though, is going to be where your 16s, your 14s, your 18s, and this will go all the way up to probably a 10 or a 12 pretty easily. And so this is just a really, really nice, you'll notice just how thick this is. That's still just a bronze. This is actually a silver midge saddle here, but if you'll look, the length on what is now a silver saddle is even quite a bit longer than these. And I bought this one quite a long time ago, and I've tied a lot of flies out of it, and it barely looks like I put a dent in it. So the economy of these is incredible, how many flies you can get out of these feathers. But let's talk just basic differences between cape and saddle. Capes are going to typically have the feather quill, or rachis as it is called. They're typically going to be stiffer. And the feather is going to have a little bit of a natural curvature to it. Saddles are going to be significantly more flat. The feather is going to be exceptionally limber, where, I mean, they'll literally just almost roll over on themselves. They're so limber, and they're very, very easy to tie with. And a lot of people really prefer saddles just for that ease of tying and the ability to work with this feather. It's just super, super simple. I'm a cape guy. I really, really like capes. And the reason why is the size variance primarily. The fact that I have one single product that can tie into the high 20s all the way to like maybe a 10 or a 12, depending on what I'm tying, is absolutely amazing. And for that, I really do favor the capes, because if I'm buying something in a color, like a single color, take that dun grizzly that I had over there. I can tie a dun grizzly midge in like a 28. I could hackle a woolly bugger in a 10 if I wanted to, with the back side of that hackle if I had to. And do it in like a shad color or a shiner color. It's great for that. So that's a lot of usage out of a single product that I won't exhaust anytime soon. So when you're looking at these, thinking about, do you want a narrower size envelope with that sweet spot being, here it's going to be, 18s, 20s, maybe even a 22 down in here, because this is a midge saddle. A standard saddle, which I didn't take out of the bag, this is going to have more of your 12, 14, 16. And they're going to be, again, just an incredible value and a really, really great product for any fly tyer to have if you're looking at kind of tying in that sweet spot. If you're looking for more variance, capes are probably where you need to land for some of that, as far as buying a single product that will accomplish that goal. Now, with the whiting line, I'm going to rebag some of this stuff because I know this is going to get away from me if I don't. So thank you for your patience while I sit here and sack hackles. But the whiting line, the interesting thing about it is derived from pretty much two primary genetic lines. That would be Henry Hoffman's genetic line, and also there was some Derby stock in there as well. I don't know the percentages on what. That would be a Dr. Tom question, and Dr. Tom would know all that like the back of his hand. Honestly, that man has probably forgotten more about chickens than most in the world will ever know. And so it is interesting to see that those lines, what is now the current whiting line, was derived from other genetics as well in the past. And so that's what crafted the line. And it's interesting because now from the grading standpoint, things have improved and improved and improved, where a Hoffman grade 1 now might be a pro grade or bronze. And I've got a couple of those on the wall, and it's interesting. If you hold up a whiting bronze, but then like the best that Hoffman had to offer, the whiting is still going to be better than the best that Hoffman ever had, just because they've been bred selectively over that amount of time. And it just keeps continuing to get better. Within capes, they are slow growing, and they also don't grow at the end of the lifespan. So as the chicken grows, as the rooster grows, you'll see the capes are slow growing, and they typically have slow growth towards the end of it. The feathers obviously grow quickly right out the gate when they're little, but towards the end of their life, they're slow growing to almost no growth at all at the end of the cape's life cycle. A saddle will continue to grow throughout the entire duration of the rooster's life. And so it is interesting that you're looking at, they harvest at a certain rate. It's the ability of those roosters to throw out that super long feather, where you see saddles that are over 30 inches long. It's incredible to see what has taken place. And so with that, you're looking at the cape. It's the reason we don't see as many high-grade capes in many instances from a length standpoint as you do in a saddle. The saddle feather's obviously going to be longer because it continues to grow. The chicken, if you've ever seen a chick, it's just this little fuzzy ball of cuteness, and then it gets, all the feathers just start coming out of everywhere. It's pretty cool. We had quail chicks at home, and they have these little pin feathers, and it all kind of starts there, and then they get their mature feathers after that, and you'll start seeing that bird really change. And so chickens are no different in that respect. So you'll see, like, as the cape, you have a mature bird, and the thing that's really cool about that is you get this really beautiful cape, but you don't see the length continue on in the latter part of their life. It slows down to almost stops at kind of the end of, I would say, as the bird gets older, closest to harvest time. And so that's kind of interesting to see that. But with this, you're looking at 42 weeks on a dry fly harvest. That's a long time. And so that's average, of course, but you've got some of these birds. It was interesting. Dr. Tom was telling us one time, it's kind of an anomaly to have a bird that has a really high grade cape and a really high grade saddle. Normally it's going to be one or the other. But to have those anomalies where it's high grade in both, and they've had them, but it's really interesting when they do have that. Those are birds that obviously do get selectively bred because they are kind of these anomalies where you do have, that's just rare compared to what they normally see. Normally you're going to have a better one or the other. Interesting thing in feather density. So the rachis or the quill, you know, they'll breed it for some elasticity. They're looking to where there's no stress in the bird's environment throughout the duration of their life, because that can interrupt feather growth and actually cause, you know, just problems within the rachis itself, where there can be stress points that are indicated in the feather as it grows, which I think is really interesting. And so they baby the birds quite a bit, but one of the things that I think is interesting is within barb density. So if you look at barbules being the little spiky bits on a dry fly hackle, so if you wrap the feather around the fly, it sticks up. Well, those are barbules, those little feather barbules there. The density of those, you know, it's interesting that actually isn't one of the main grading components, because some of that is actually determined by color. And in talking with Phil Trim about this, I thought it was interesting. He said that natural dun will always have a lower barb count. But for instance, light ginger is often their highest. And it's interesting because we do see some really good light ginger capes and saddles come through the store. And it's interesting that even certain colors will even have stiffer rachises. Where you're looking at like a furnace hackle, for instance, tends to be very, very stiff, where other colors are not. So there are some, you know, just traits that are inherent based on the actual final color of the product. It's interesting. And a lot of those are natural colors. And while there's dyed product and natural product, some of those qualities are inherent in the color itself just because of how it's bred. Let's talk about a couple other products in that. And I know I've got a few other things over here. Let me see what I have. Within the whiting line, this is something that we do need to mention, is they also have soft hackle chickaboo. And this is something really cool. So soft hackles, I mean, a lot of people really contribute that to the hens, but within the soft hackle chickaboo, this takes place off the roosters. And so I think it's kind of interesting. If you look on the back of these packages, by the way, there's tons and tons and tons of information. But the rooster product here, it does have a soft hackle, and then this part here is actually chickaboo, which is like a micro marabou. You can darn near tie a full woolly bugger out of this whole package. Very, very useful. 2 different feather types in one pelt. Real webby soft hackle for collars, for hackling, for buggers, for, you know, soft hackles, anything like that. Great for that sort of stuff. Bass bug tails, you can use this for that as well. And then you've got this really cool micro marabou, actually chickaboo, that does a fantastic job. Each one of these is a perfect small woolly bugger tail. It's great. So I love using this product. It's incredible. Another thing I'm going to mention, and this is something that I know we're skipping a little bit out of order, but one of the genetic lines that they maintained on the farm was the spay line. And we used a lot of spay soft hackle chickaboo here at the shop. And then the other side of that spay line is they produce these chickens that have these really long, almost hair-like feathers. And I'll show kind of the difference, because you just saw a normal cape. If you see one from a spay line here, you'll look, it almost looks hair-like. It's very, very interesting. But the thing is, they have a very, very difficult time with this genetic line there on the farm, and they're pretty much completely out of this. And so while it's a very unique genetic line, they are very, very difficult for the farm to grow. And also just some of the demand on this stuff, it's not a standard dry fly hackle, so there's not going to be as much demand on it. But if you ever find any of these running around, they're super cool to get. But what we used primarily in the store was the soft hackle chickaboo that was kind of a long, real, you know, webby, almost hair-like marabou product, marabou-like product that was really, really wonderful to use. And that has pretty much gone the way of the dodo for a little while. So that's kind of a sad thing, but again, you'll see that within, you know, any sort of genetic business, you're looking at, there are certain lines that are going to flourish. There's some that they're a little bit harder to actually, the resiliency of the line, their ability to breed, you know, just all that sort of stuff. And even some of it based on environment and climate and things like that can even be a little bit of a concern, you know, based on the fact that these are being grown in Colorado. So there's a lot of things that take place there, but in terms of this line, you're going to have a hard time finding some of the space stuff left over. I think we have a few of these guys still in store, not very many, and it's very limited in color. But that Space Soft Hackle Chickaboo, I mean, I use that in a lot of my personal tying on, you know, my mimic, or excuse me, not my mimics, but my creek leeches. I use them in the chuck wagon. I use these in the pinch hitter. I love this material. A lot of you have bought it over the years and are big fans of it, but that has kind of gone the way of the dodos. So you will see some of those lines go away. However, the Soft Hackle Chickaboo in that golden brown, this is a color that we have custom dyed for the shop. It comes in other products. It just doesn't often come in this. So we actually had a custom dye run of these. And this is a golden brown in that Chickaboo as well. So you can still use this as a replacement for that Chickaboo on that Spay line that we can no longer get. So feather structure is a little different, but it's still absolutely amazing. And now we get a soft hackle out of it as well, which is pretty spectacular. So anyway, just some things there on some of the lines there. Within the whiting line as well, you have bugger packs, which is literally just a small hackle pack that has, you know, typically somewhere between 3 and 5 pieces, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on how the pieces break up. It's approximately the same amount of feather quantity, but bugger packs are really made to tie woolly buggers in a range of sizes. Really good deal. We stock them downstairs. Just a super small pack, very easy. I didn't bring one to show, but it's a great bang for the buck because every feather is usable. Everything is perfect. And if you're tying woolly buggers and you've used any of the old saddles, that, you know, if you just get that loose strung saddle hackle, most of that stuff's just completely unusable by other brands. This one is, every single feather is purpose driven for a woolly bugger. So if you tie a lot of buggers in a range of sizes, they do select a full size range of feathers for those packs. They're very economical and they'll live on your bench a long time before you actually run dry in them. It's really awesome to have that sort of product available to the consumer. The other thing I would mention is Schlappen, and I do have some Schlappen around here somewhere. Fun to say, fun to tie with. Schlappen, you can buy it a couple different ways. You can get it in pre-sized bundles. These are like 6 to 10 inch feathers here. And then you can get the loose Schlappen that's really great too, where this is a wide variety of sizes. It's not sorted, so they're a little bit more intensive to deal with on the bench. But again, another Rooster product that's incredibly just wonderful stuff. Schlappen typically tends to be quite wide and very webby. It's a very soft and webby feather. But with these, the thing that's really incredible about it is it's great for the longer ones like this. Try Hackle and a woolly bugger with these sometime. It's incredible stuff. If you're doing game changers, you can tie a game changer out of that one pack because they're sized differently. So you can start with the head of the fly with the larger feathers, taper them down to the smaller stuff within a single bag of feathers. And you can sort them at your fly tying bench and bag them separately, or you can leave them in the bag and just kind of, you know, pull them at will. But Schlappen, having, you know, stuff that is genetically bred, that is longer, that you're getting the benefit of all the other genetics that really were poured into the dry fly side, it improves the bird all the way across in many instances. And so this is some wonderful stuff. The dye jobs on this are incredible. Their dye master at Whiting Farms is literally a genius. And this is just something that the color fastness of these feathers, the color variety is very wide, and is just a wonderful thing to have in the hopper if you intend to do any sort of warm water fly tying or streamers for trout. It's just incredible stuff. One of the things I will mention before we leave the whiting side, so this is just, again, a saddle. You know, dry fly feathers, you know, obviously not all are created equal, but the ability of these feathers to actually push a fly up off the water, that's what a dry fly feather does, is when you wrap it around the hook, it sticks out like this, makes just a circular fan all the way around that fly. Basically, the fly does a push-up off the surface of the water, not breaking surface tension. So these barbs on these feathers need to be very stiff, very stout, and not very limber at all. And so that's the thing that's really helpful about these, is these feathers are very resilient. I find them to be quite durable, especially when compared to the stuff that I used to tie with. Again, just when you put, I put it this way, when you're doing a project, if you have great tools, you're going to enjoy the project more and you're not fighting your equipment. When you're tying flies and you have great hackle, you are going to enjoy the entire experience more because your materials are going to actually suit the job perfectly and they're bred to do the job, not packaged and said, hey, use this. This is something that, like, if I'm tying dry flies, I'm only using whiting. I mean, why not? It's the best in the world. And so I'm going to enjoy it more. I'm going to get more life out of the product. And if they're stored properly, they last a long, long time. I have original Hoffmans up there that probably, I mean, gosh, that probably predates my fly tying experience. And that's what's so awesome about it, is from that standpoint, they're still usable feathers because they were stored properly. And I'm not the first owner. I do collect some of this stuff, but it is, and I mean, I still tie with it. But the thing that's really cool about it is when you find some of these feathers like that in colors that aren't available anymore. And we do get a lot of questions about that, about, well, why isn't this color around anymore? Why this or why that? And I think that that's one of the things that you'll run into with this is, with these feathers, as the genetic line narrows, you'll see colors that once were pretty prevalent, they just kind of veer off the wayside and they're no longer there. So colors like medium Cahill dun, that's gone. You know, a lot of your champagnes and things like that in the Hebert minor line, those are gone. And so it's that are virtually gone. I mean, there might be an anomaly here every now and then, but those colors are virtually gone from modern day breeding. Now we have some other places where you can get that, which is kind of fun, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But the fact of the matter is if you've tied with this stuff long enough and done some work with it, you'll see things kind of change year over year. It's very, very interesting. So moving on, we're going to take this to, let me move some hackles out of the way again. There's a lot of those running around the office today. Let's move this over, since we're on the topic of champagne. If you've never seen these and you want to get your first dry fly hackle, probably the best way to do it out there. These things are incredibly economical and they're amazing in quality. So these are just those introductory or combo hackle packs. And I hate calling them introductory because these truly are better hackle than I probably tied with for the first several, definitely, not even probably. It's better hackle than I tied with for probably the first 10 years of my fly tying career. This stuff is astounding, and they have a very, very large sweet spot of the feathers, like those 14s, 12s, 16s. Great, great lineup. Now, this line in the genetic line, they refer to this as the Red X line. And so this line literally is bred for these packs, and they primarily throw the colors that you see here. Now, there will be some dyeing done, and sometimes if there's, if there wasn't enough duns, or if there's, we didn't get natural blacks, we needed a dyed black or something like that, you may see some dye jobs every now and then. But a lot of this is natural colors all the way through. And so that's the interesting side of things, is that when you see these feathers, they are going to be natural. In many cases, like for instance, the grizzly is of course natural. That's a really nice natural. So you get a lot of options. But they also do this, which is dirty. And so we have some of these in store. This is what is called the Catskill version. Phil refers to these. And so he does these for us here at the shop. These are super sweet. I mean, just in this one, I've got a natural, this is really a cool, kind of almost like a badger brown. It's really, really beautiful. We've got a barred, probably a barred, it's kind of between a dark and a medium ginger. I've got a golden badger, and I've got a cree. And those are all half capes. And so, cree, if you go to try to buy that online, it's going to cost you a fortune. This right off the shelf is 85 bucks. And you've got 4 half capes, and some of which in colors that you are not going to find separately at that price ever. Like, good luck finding a cree for $85 of any size, shape, or color. And these are amazing quality. Now, everybody's like, well, that's the introductory hackle pack. We don't need one of those. Fun fact, these are amazing and they tie great, but everybody was up in arms when these came out. And this is the Heritage line. The Heritage line has a typically larger feather, and I'll pull a couple of these out. We'll throw these on the viewing table over here. But they typically have a slightly larger feather than what you would find in either a Hebert minor or in a whiting. So red label or green label, if you want kind of the colloquial terms for it. But they're going to have a slightly larger feather than that on a typical basis. I'm going to throw these bags down so I know what things go where. And we'll show you some feathers here. These are beautiful. This is kind of almost a speckled badger to speckled badger variant here. Very, very beautiful saddle, and it's massive. I mean, there's just feathers for days. And then this is just a really beautiful Heritage cree. Fun fact, this genetic line right here, so the white label, it's the Heritage line, is actually a selectively bred one of these. So the red X line actually is the basis for the entirety of the heritage line. So a lot of people don't know that. But these here, so the heritage line itself, when you see that, it's a beautiful, beautiful pelt for one. And the birds, they have a lot more of those historic colors. You're going to see a lot of crees, a lot of barring. I'll see some champagnes out of this line. I'll see a lot of speckled badger. You'll see some really, really neat colors. The variants are absolutely wonderful. And a variant is simply a color that doesn't fall within any single category. It could be a little bit of everything or a part of a couple of things. And so variants are unique in the fact that they're kind of one-offs. I think they're some of the coolest hackles you could ever buy. I know some people get so just religious about, I want this color. Like, buy the variant. I'm like, what two bugs in nature don't have a little bit of differing? I mean, you might have one that's got some speckles and one that doesn't. You have this and that. You've got all those feathers within a single pelt. I think that's kind of natural variety in and of itself, and it's really, really awesome to have that within a single pelt. So within this line, heritage, typically a little bit larger feather on average than you're going to find, especially in the red label, but even somewhat in the Hebert as well. And so this is just a really, really incredible feather. Very, I would say, beginner friendly, economical. You're not paying top dollar on some of this stuff. And these, I mean, and just the color richness of the line. I mean, that's just a beautiful cree. And so it's a really great feather overall to have in your arsenal. And you can get it in colors that you aren't going to find in the other genetic lines. So something to mention there if you're looking into the heritage line. That'll come in saddles and capes. And that's a little bit newer. Overall, they were looking at calling it, it had a couple other name options at one point, but the heritage line is just absolutely spectacular. So pardon me again, I'm sacking feathers again. There's going to be, like I said, a lot of that. But these are just beautiful, beautiful pelts. And this one I actually had to pull off the shelf downstairs. I was like, I don't have a heritage saddle running around in my office at the moment, so if somebody wants this one, it may still be downstairs. It just depends on when you watch this. So the crees, we do see more of those out of the heritage line. We see a lot of them, and they're very beautiful, and they range in color. I mean, cree is obviously, if you don't know what that is a tri-colored bar, essentially. It's a grizzly feather, essentially, that has kind of a ginger to a dark ginger bar on it. And so it actually is kind of a multi-layered feather. So it's basically, if you're looking here, it goes that black to white to ginger, black to white to ginger, and it makes this incredible, beautiful pelt that's very sought after. And it's also a way you can tie an Adam's dry fly with one feather. A traditional Adam's dry fly is a grizzly and a brown that you take those feathers and mix them as you wrap them. Basically, you layer them or wrap them through each other, and it makes a traditional Adam's dry fly. Well, you pretty much have all that in a cree, so you can literally just hackle it with the one feather and get a very similar appearance. I love doing that. I tie a lot for all my high mountain stuff and things like that. I tie a lot with crees. Again, they used to be super hard to obtain, but thanks to this sort of stuff, they're pretty darn easy to find. And that used to be like the holy grail, and still is in many ways, of just that kind of that tri-color hackle that's so beautiful and that's so rarely seen in other color arrangements. So just be aware that if you're looking for cree, they're not as hard to find as they used to be. Finding a real high-grade one or something like that, that might be a little bit more difficult at times. But finding one just to tie with and enjoy and have really good feathers in the process, that we can get you. If you need one, we can get you one. So then if we move out, so that basically encapsulates the entirety of the dry fly line as it currently stands. There were other things like the high and dry line that have gone away for the most part. And there's even, there was a Euro hackle line that you could kind of mess with and do some of that. And then the other thing I would mention is anything that doesn't make grade. Say they have a bird that's not even a pro grade. They move that into their commercial hackles, and that's what a lot of your fly manufacturers will use to tie their dry flies. Still an exceptional feather, but it probably has like a lot of broken tips or something wasn't right. Still beautiful in color, great to work with. It just didn't cut the mustard for making the grade to actually have a retail product. And so they still utilize those birds as much as possible, so nothing goes to waste on that front either. But within the dry fly line, the differences between them. Whiting, the red label birds are going to have a typically smaller feather. They're typically revered as going to be the premier genetic. And so when you run into that, you'll see it. And they also have, I know whiting is also known for having 100 packs, where they will sell like pre-selected saddle feathers that tie a minimum of 100 flies. You can buy them. They sell very well in certain shops. We don't carry a single one of them. Personally, I'd rather you buy a cape. It's just a better buy in my mind to have that sort of size variance when you're starting out. The 100 packs are sized, they're pre-sized. So if it's a 14, you get size 14 feathers, and 16s, you get size 16 feathers. They're a really good value if you're learning your sizes and things of that sort, but you can very easily do that with a Hackle gauge, which we've got here at the shop. They're not expensive. Just get one, put it on your vise, you'll have it for the rest of your life. And that's a way to actually size your feathers yourself and make that exceptionally easy, so that when you buy a cape, you have the full spectrum of sizes for not all that much more money. It's nominal. So it's something to really look at. A pro grade cape isn't going to cost you very much at all, and you're going to have the full spectrum and a lot higher feather count. So just as a way, that's our personal recommendation. Everybody's got the way they want it done, and that's totally fine. That's just one of the personal recommendations that we have here as a shop. And then within the Hebert line, we didn't really talk about the lineage, but that was Ted Hebert and Andy Miner, that those were their lines that were basically slapped together to make the Hebert Miner line within Whiting Farms. And so that's a line that Dr. Thomas continued down, and it was very much heralded for throwing a lot of those champagne colors and the natural dun lines, the brown duns, the dark gray duns. Lots of really, really great colors, and it had a very good looking grizzly too. And so that's one of the things that's really neat about it, is even within the genetic lines, the grizzly differs a little bit. Some of them have more white, some of them have more black. You'll see that. It's super cool to see just the natural diversity within these lines. But that's one of the things that's interesting. And a fun fact here about the Hebert Miner stuff, and I kind of got tickled on this one. Only Dr. Tom, he's the only one that grades Hebert Miner. Nobody else at the farm grades them. So when you see a Hebert, I had that one running around here that was a platinum grade, he's the one that touched it. And so that's the one that he's the one that does all the Hebert grading at the farm. So he'll leave the other grading to some of the other folks, but he does all the Hebert grading personally, which I thought was kind of interesting. And that's according to Mr. Phil Trim, who I know you grade a lot of stuff, Phil, but I'm hoping you'll probably see this somewhere down the line. But one of these days, if you ever need some help grading Heberts, I'm down. So, nonetheless, with the Hebert line, you're going to see the capes and the saddles. You're not really going to see the soft hackle chickaboo and all the bugger packs and things like that. That's not really going to come out of the Hebert side of things. It's really going to be capes and saddles, with some of those other pieces being utilized in other places. And that's pretty much the entirety of that. With every one of your rooster lines, obviously there's going to be hens. So we're going to revisit all these genetic lines again in the hen department in just a second. And so with this, one of the things I would mention, the other roosters that you need to be aware of as we kind of move along, the freshwater streamer side of things. This is super cool. And I took some notes here because this is just so awesome. This line really did, it was basically kind of the derivative of, we needed something smaller than this. I'm going to just compare the two capes. This is the American line, which is basically more or less it's mainly derived from a Polish chicken, and basically refined for colors and everything like that down the line. And it's a physically large bird, so really, really great for bass and saltwater and warm water applications, pike, anything like that. The freshwater streamer was basically the same general idea, but in a slightly smaller feather. So what it was, and this I actually knew, it was this bird crossed with a Brahma. And so the Brahma gave it its size reduction while still keeping that structure from the Polish line that you saw in the current day American line that Whiting has. So kind of interesting on how that all shaped up. And these are awesome bass bug tails. And so the rooster capes, you can use them for seducers, you can use them for streamers, you can use them for bass bugs. The sky's the limit. It's an incredible, incredible pelt. This, the freshwater streamer, might just be the best seducer feather I've ever seen in my life. In fact, there's not even a might about it. It definitely is. This feather here is just perfect for our Texas coast and all of our inland stuff that we do here in the hill country. This was a much needed product, and it's one of the newer ones to the whiting lineup, but a very, very useful product for everything we do on the Texas coast. And I'm telling you, get one of these capes, splay those tails out on your seducer, and tell me you've seen a better feather. I doubt it. I very, very realistically doubt it. These things are amazing. Each of those also produces the equivalent saddles. So American saddles, these are big. I mean, that's a very, very significant sized feather. So when you have these, you know, these are going to be used for, again, bug tails, longer streamers where you want more flowing hackle out the back. These are really, really good for like Northeast saltwater applications where you have longer, you know, like mackerel style patterns and things like that. You can find that in a lot of this. This is really cool too. The freshwater streamer, the hackle size is narrower and longer just because of that size reduction. And when that happens, you're looking at, it's because they mixed it with a Brahma, but it's a great woolly bugger hackle. We use a lot of these for hackling mid-size to larger size buggers, and just a great all-around usage for those. And so all these very much more of a warm water, saltwater side, but invaluable to the fly tire. So I'm going to set these guys back down and bring up our last one here. And this is one that I think really does need some serious credit. I'm going to throw this guy over here. We'll throw a close-up on that. Coq de Leon. Coq de Leon is actually a wonderful feather. It's made a lot more noise lately with the craze in all the Euro nymphing and contact nymphing stuff that you'll see in tight line nymphing through basically where some of those European techniques were brought over to the US. We're seeing a lot more demand for Coq de Leon, and oddly enough, these feathers, if you look, they're very wispy, they're very flexible, but these are what a lot of people use, and you'll hear it called Pardo a lot. And Pardo is simply this natural speckling. That this is a different color here, but they have a light and a medium and a dark Pardo. That's this naturally flecked and speckled feather that is just absolutely beautiful on dry flies and also for nymph tails. You can use it for nymph legs. I have applications that I use this for a dry fly hackle on certain damselfly patterns and larger dry flies, even some stone flies. If I'm tying like 4s and 6s, I'll hackle them with this a lot of times. Very, very incredible feather. But the thing that I think people forget about this is since this feather, if you'll look, and I know it's probably a little hard to see on the camera here. Let me pull these feathers over and see if we can get one to stand out. There we go. You can see that feather is very, very just flexible, and the quill itself, or the rachis, is just almost just tiny, wispy thin, making this feather incredibly mobile. It does a great job on the back of a bass bug. So I tie a lot of my diving bugs and things like that out of Coq de Leon now, simply because it moves more than just about any feather out there. So it's a very, very useful feather to have around when you're looking at tying bass bugs or anything of the sort. I love these things. So not just for dry flies, like large dry flies, not just for nymph tails and dry fly tails. You can also use this for warm water applications, and coincidentally, they also sell it in these predator packs where you can get them dyed. These are dyed saddles like this, where you can actually get these, and I think I have it backwards, but they'll typically have this little orange sticker on it that says predator pack. But it's a half and half, so it's 2 half saddles in 2 different colors where you can take those and mix and match, and it's super cool to have these. I keep an array of those in my office as well. If you want a whole saddle, this one actually is a dyed over Pardo. Kind of a neat color here. You can see the Pardo flecking in this one, and I think it's really good. This is obviously a dyed color, but when they dye it over Pardo, you'll see it has this very cool natural fleck to it. See how it just looks speckled all the way through the feather. Just exudes realism, just a very, very beautiful pelt, beautiful feather, and very useful for a lot of applications in warm water, salt water, and even in the trout environment. So very easy to find a lot of uses for these feathers. That pretty much completes the bulk of, I mean, they've got a couple other rooster lines, but I mean, that's going to be what we talk about today because that's what's commonly available and what most people are seeking out. Once again, we said they have roughly a dozen different genetic lines that they are maintaining for fly tying, with approximately 100 on the farm. So that's a lot of chickens. And so when you're looking at that going through everything the farm has to offer is probably unrealistic. Let me throw all these down and make way for some hens here. But that is the rooster lineup as it pertains to most of our dry fly applications and warm water and saltwater applications. Again, you start looking at fly types, streamers, bass bugs, saltwater, jungle, anything like that. There's all this really incredible stuff that is not in the dry fly world. But since we're getting, different genetic lines, it's not all just going to be this super narrow dry fly stuff. You're going to see, other genetic lines that are throwing a much bigger hackle, and it's going to be much more robust with larger quill sizes and things of that sort that do hold up to a little bit more abuse when you have toothy fish, demanding environments or anything like that. So salmon and steelhead also another one that is very, very critical. Let's kind of move over to the wet fly side of things. And so I'm sure if anybody's got any questions, again, you can drop those in the comments and I'll do my very best to respond. But let's kind of move over into the hen side of things, which I think is really interesting. So here, if you have any, random pieces of trimmings off of any of the wet fly material, they wind up here. And that's a Fly Tires variety pack. The wet fly stuff, and you'll see this is basically, I think it's funny they had to spell it out for you, but it's like you've got panfish, bass, pike, popper, streamers, saltwater, salmon, and steelhead. I mean, that covers most of your bases if you're looking for what to use a variety pack for. But this thing is stuffed full of feathers. And yes, you read that right. The price here, $16. That's a lot of feathers for 16 bucks. And so that's one of the things I tell people. I'm like, if you're looking at getting into fly tying and trying to kind of mix up your wet fly game or some of your hackle game for your streamers, quickest, easiest way to do it and without breaking the bank. It's spectacular. And so that's something I would definitely reference definitely go look for next time you're in the store is any sort of variety pack that we've got, and no two of them are the same. So very much worth your time. The very next thing we're going to talk about is Brahma hen. Brahma hen, the interesting thing about it is it actually can be used as a Hungarian partridge substitute. So when you see this, I'm going to move a couple of things around here. Hang on just a sec, throwing feathers everywhere. Let me bust this little gal out here. Brahma hen is just an absolutely beautiful feather. Very, very heavily mottled, very rounded. You'll know that they're not wedge shape or pointed like a rooster feather. In this case, they're going to be very rounded, a little bit more, I would just say broader in overall structure as well, with a lot of fluffy, downy material at the base of the feather, which also really helps move in the water and form a natural fly pattern. So a great feather to have. But this can be used as a Hungarian partridge substitute. Brahma hen's a little tough to get right now, but it can be found on occasion. And I'm sure we'll see more of it in the future. It's a genetic line they're maintaining. But it also comes in, that's the saddle, this would be the cape. The cape is going to offer a badger feather, where it has that, a badger feather simply means that it's got a black center with a colored edge or outer. In this case, it normally would come in like a cream badger. This one's been dyed tan. And then you'll still get some of those mottled feathers on the side here as well. So capes and saddles both available. But the other thing I would mention here is that you also have soft hackle chickaboo. And I'll pull this little guy out here. These things are so cool. This one's dyed lavender, which is just beautiful. Such a great color for any of our warm water stuff and even some trout environments. But if you'll look, it's a little hard to see on camera, but you see it almost looks like the chickaboo portion of this pelt. It looks like it's frost tipped. And that's one of the things I really admire about the soft hackle chickaboo within the Brahma line is it's got this little bit of color variance right at the end where it looks like it's frost tipped. Just moves like crazy in the water. It's absolutely incredible. So again, lots of soft hackle for some of your bigger stuff, carp flies, anything like that. Probably one of the single greatest carp materials out there is soft hackle chickaboo in the Brahma line. And yes, it comes in a lot of olives and browns and golden olives and things like that that are going to make for very, very good colors if you're a carp tyer. It's pretty spectacular. So Brahma hen, a physically small bird with a very, very big job to do. And so we use it a lot in our warm water tying. I use it a lot personally for a lot of my panfish tying in Brushy Creek, and even a lot of my trout tying where I'm going to soft hackle a nymph or something of that sort. Now, within Coq de Leon that we just talked about, there's a number of products as well. You would have the hen cape, very broad, very wide feathers, very webby, but mottled. You're going to see them very heavily mottled, and I'll see if I can get this guy out of here so you can see that as well. We've got soft hackle chickaboo and a cape over here as well, but you can see how mottled these feathers are, and just the general size. It's a pretty large feather, and so these are going to be a lot better for, you know, large warm water flies or hackling a collar. You can even use these for like a popping bug on the back if you're looking for a really big rounded feather. You will also find them in dyed colors as well. So it's just an awesome, awesome material, and there's no real limit to any of this. That's the beautiful thing about fly tying, is that there's no true way to exhaust every option of any one feather. Soft hackle chickaboo, same kind of story. You get the bigger soft hackles at the base, and this is actually kind of a mottled or flecked chickaboo, which is just deadly, because even at rest, you know, the feather's still going to be moving, but since it's speckled, it kind of doubles that illusion of motion, which is awesome. So another good one. Hen capes, this is a white one, so it's probably a little hard to show up here. But hen capes, the cool thing about those is within this, you're going to see the feather shape is still going to be very rounded, and I think we can see that here. It's going to be rounded, but it almost has kind of a translucent or see-through tip there, and you can kind of see that. This makes great, I love using these for upright wings on dry flies. I do that quite a bit. And the other thing is it really does form a nice soft hackle when you need it. The stuff on the lower portion of the cape down here does an amazing job of hackling and looking really, really good on a hook. So something to mention there for sure. Now, the freshwater streamer side of things, the hens do have capes and saddles. The saddles pretty much go to commercial. These, we don't stock them in store, but if you ever needed one, it's basically a Brahma hen that's slightly bigger. Because they, again, remember, this is a Brahma hen mixed with a Polish. So it's going to be a physically larger bird with a little bit bigger feathers. But there are some capes out there if you ever want them. If you ever need one, we can order you one. But as far as a commercially produced product for retail sales, these are very seldom requested and not something that we typically carry in store. But the freshwater streamer, I mean, that line does, obviously, every rooster's got to have a hen. So that's the whole thing, is they still do produce hen hackles there as well. It's just something that's not very, very much marketed in any way, shape, or form. Within the green labels, you're going to have saddles and capes. Sorry, it's reversed for me on camera, so I'm having to look at that a little harder. But with these, you'll see a lot of the really neat colors. So I think this is really awesome. We'll show this one up close. This is a really fun one. This is a rusty natural dun in a hen cape in the Hebert Minor line. This is just something that, I mean, I drool over stuff like this, where you get that dun center, and then you've got these really, really nice rust edges. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And so another one of those major perks of using Hebert Minor, that natural dun-based color line. You'll get some really cool ones, like you'll see Greenwell is another color that actually shows up in the line. Just incredibly great. Now, what would we use a hen cape for? Obviously with dry fly stuff, it's pretty easy. I want a fly that floats, I wrap it around the hook, and ta-da, we're done. The soft hackle world is really where the usage starts getting crazy, because you've got all this stuff that goes under the water. You've got carp flies, nymphs, you've got, all this subsurface bass stuff, you have salt water, you've got all this stuff that doesn't require a fly that essentially has a bristly feather and floats. And so we're looking at the sky's the limit in the soft hackle game. And it has some really incredible colors. Now, if there was one thing I would use a cape over a saddle. So capes, small nymphs. You can hackle down in the mid-20s with these guys. This is going to be for physically larger flies. They'll still hackle down to probably a 16 if you get a really good one, but typically it's like 12 or 14 is about as small as you can go out of a saddle. In a cape, not the case. You can go as small as you want. They're a differently shaped feather. They're going to be a little bit longer, a little bit narrower, just because of the nature of the bird, but very, very cool to have these on your bench for some of the smaller applications in trout tying specifically. When you go to the actual saddle, this is my favorite. I love these things. This is a Hebert Minor Wild Type Brown. And basically it's just a no holds barred, just like speckled, flecked kind of, edge is going to be slightly faint. I love this. And it has a really cool center list, which basically means it has that white line or cream colored line down the feather where you can see that center list, or that color is going to be really, on the rake is just going to be a lot brighter. Beautiful, beautiful feather. Best hackle ever for crawfish claws, for hackling Dave's red squirrel nymph. If you're a Whitlock fan, I find myself reaching for this color more than anything out there for soft hackles. It's just absolutely beautiful. And sometimes they're kind of a mousy brown, sometimes they're a gray, but that wild type is, these aren't expensive. I mean, what's it? I don't even know if we got a price on one of these. I don't think I do, but they're not expensive. I mean, these things are so inexpensive, and there's just not a better hackle for it. Sorry, I decided to throw that one and killed something else in the process. But here's the whole idea with these is these are just absolutely phenomenal. Bang for the buck, just amazing, amazing hackle. And again, like if you're tying carp, if you're tying, panfish, trout, anything like that, to have that really, really rich color tone and that real, just that perfect webbiness to it that actually makes that hackle move in the water and push more water. That's why we use hens over rooster. Rooster is going to be bristly and try to cause the fly to float. Here, what we're after is truly something that's going to be, very webby, very mobile, and absorb water rather than push water away. So again, within the whiting line, same story. Saddles, capes, also available. The difference between a Hebert cape and a whiting cape, for one, physical size. The whiting cape comes in quite a smaller package. The bird itself is physically smaller. And then in addition to that, the feather size in the whiting is going to be smaller. Hebert's going to have, as far as the feather stature, it's going to be larger. So Hebert's a physically larger bird, going to have a physically larger feather. Whiting's going to be smaller bird, smaller feather. And so you would get smaller hook sizes, a little bit more narrowness, everything that goes along with that. And then finally, the American line. Also, same story. You're going to have hen capes. You're going to have hen saddles. Interestingly enough, I had two of the same color. You can tell I like this color a lot. Use that a lot for egg patterns, saltwater tying, things of that sort. But basically a larger, webbier, kind of saltwater type fly anything you need a lot of motion. I use that a lot for on my Borsky sliders. I'll collar it before I put the deer hair head on. So I've got all these soft hackles poking out from behind there. It's beautiful. It looks amazing, and it's just this perfect webby hackle, and having that kind of that shrimpy orange hot spot looks really good, or any sort of color you can get there. There's a lot of options within that lineup as well, but that's just kind of a brief overview of kind of the rooster versus hen and everything that goes along with it. So hopefully you have questions. I'll answer as many as I can. Some of their other products, like, everybody's going to ask, like, what is bird fur? Well, it's actually off of a spay rooster. Mini bird fur comes off the hen, and then you're looking at regular bird fur comes off the rooster because it's just a smaller stature bird. So kind of funny how that all works out as well. But in short, you can see that the options are endless. And I've just showed little color smatterings and samplings all the way across. We've talked about grading, we've talked about roosters, we've talked about hens, we've talked about the farm, we've talked about genetic lines, we've talked about lineages, we've talked about all that sort of stuff, and we're not even scratching the surface. But I don't want to bore you to death. I don't even know how long we've been doing this, but nonetheless, it's a ton of information, and it's super, super great that Whiting Farms has done what they've done for the fly tyer. And I think a lot of people just don't have any idea what goes into making this possible, to where we've got the feathers that we have now that didn't exist before, and they're only getting better, and there's only new breakthroughs. And sure, there's some cool, like, one-off stuff that we'll probably never see again. But it's really insane to see that, like, with a natural material, and here's my caution to those of you that do shop for natural materials. If you find something that you are on the fence about buying, buy it. I try to live my life with no regrets. Buyer's remorse I've never had with Hackle. And so when you're looking at this, if you go into a shop, and I own a fly shop and one of the larger brick and mortar whiting dealers in the world, But I still go to a fly shop, and the first thing that I do when I go to a shop that has hackles, right to the hackles. I can buy synthetics anywhere, but hackles, if they've got a natural something or another that I'll never, like a dyed hackle, you can get those anytime. Natural colors. When you find a natural colored hackle, I don't care the grade. If you like the color, you're like, should I get it? I kind of have one like this, but should I? You may never see its equal. There's no two exactly the same. So for me, I intend to just buy it, and I'll cry about it later if I need to. But I never do, because I've never had buyer's remorse when it comes to hackle. So it's not he or she with the most feathers wins, but it sure doesn't hurt when it comes to tying every fly under the sun. And it's just one of those places of hackle, whether it be dry fly, wet fly, anything you're doing in salt or warm water. Whiting's got a feather for it. Nobody does it better than they do. And I've served on their pro team for a number of years, and Noah, I just had just a great time making relationships with people over the years at the farm. And it's truly a one-of-a-kind place. And it's something that I think is truly precious to the fly fishing industry, not just to us that, we're professional fly tyers. This is for everyone. I mean, anyone can get one of those combo hackle packs, and or a variety pack. If you want a little bit of everything, you can get it and not have to spend an arm and a leg. And it truly is something that everybody deserves to have great fly tying hackle, and Whiting's made that possible. So if you have any other questions that you'd like me to answer, please throw them in the comments. I would happily answer that as much as I can. And thank you for watching, and we'll do this class again as a live so that we can have more interaction one of these days. But we're going to leave this up here for now, and really appreciate y'all watching, and hopefully you learned something in the process. And man, if there's anything we can do as a shop, just let us know. We're here to help. That is what we're all about, educating and getting you on the water, or making it more fun for you to spend time behind the vise and designing new patterns. So anything we can do to help, do not hesitate to let us know. And thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.